Welcome to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25 Media. We feature top founders, executives, and business leaders from all over the world.
Hi, Chad Franzen here, co-host for this show where we feature top restaurateurs, investors, and business leaders. This is part of our SpotOn series. SpotOn has the best-in-class payment platform for retail, and they have a flagship solution called SpotOn Restaurant, where they combine marketing, software, and payments all in one. They've served everyone from larger chains like Dairy Queen and Subway to small mom-and-pop restaurants. To learn more, go to SpotOn.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. We help B2B businesses to get ROI, clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships through Done For You podcasts. If you have a B2B business and want to build great relationships with clients, referral partners, and thought leaders in your space, there's no better way to do it than through podcasts and content marketing. To learn more, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. My guest today is Eric Slaymaker. Eric is the CEO and founder of the Wingers Alehouse brand, a family-friendly sports alehouse that has been around for 30 years in the Mountain West and is now expanding into the Midwest. Eric and his brother Scott have also been franchisees with a number of different restaurant brands, and Eric was the founding partner of an alternative radio stations in the 1990s. In his spare time, he is a special musical guest with a few musical artists and performs frequently with the internationally famous Irish rock band, the Young Dubliners, all around the United States. Eric, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you?
Good. Great to be here with you, Chad.
Hey, tell me, if I go to Wingers for the first time today, what kind of vibe would I experience?
Hopefully you will get a high energy, fun experience. It is certainly a bit of a sports bar vibe, but we kind of stopped short of calling ourselves a full-fledged sports bar. It would be a little more of a gastropub experience, but probably, the number one thing is we would want you to walk away and say that I had great food and I had a really fun time.
Okay, awesome. So you started it in 1993. What kind of inspired you to start Wingers back then?
Well, I was my brother and I, our father was in the restaurant business and he was a franchisee. He became, in fact, if you go back to the 1980s, he became, even in the 70s, he became the franchisee with Sizzler Restaurants, of all places. Now, I'm based out of Salt Lake City, and our father was based in Salt Lake as I was growing up. He went and got the franchise rights to Sizzler Restaurants for Alaska. And how he did that, not living in Alaska, I have no damn idea at the time. I was pretty young, but he convinced them to give him the franchise rights to him, and he became a franchisee and had successful, kind of back in the Sizzler restaurant heydays, back when in the heyday of the salad bar. 70s and 80s, if you will. He had restaurants in Alaska and Wyoming, and then he became involved with a Mexican chain franchise group as a franchisee called Chi-Chi's.
Yeah.
And I think he opened a Chi-Chi's in Salt Lake City, Utah in 1983 that was, for the time, now Utah's been relatively conservative, particularly conservative when it came to, alcohol and liquor. And I remember I was kind of young at the time, but I remember somebody saying this was the first restaurant in Utah that actually was a bar and cantina, actually, in a restaurant combined. Because in Utah, you were either a restaurant or a bar, and you didn't mix them. And it was quite unique at that point. Very successful. He sold those, and then he became involved with TGI Fridays and Tony Roma's back in the day. So he was very entrepreneurish, and was obviously quite a regional player in the franchise world. And I, having grown up in that and having been involved and actually working for my dad for a little bit, I really was incentivized. I wanted to create my own brand. I wanted to be a franchisor. And so, uh, over time, taking notes, I, scraped up my every little bit and found little investors. And in 1993, opened the first Wingers. At that point, it was called Wingers Diner. It was a small little 2,900 square foot diner style building just outside of Salt Lake City. And what that first location that was opened, there are a few threads that some of the food items, some of the sauce we're so famous for, uh, still is alive and vibrant today. But as far as the experience, the brand has evolved dramatically in those 30 years. And so the buildings and the environments that we are growing with and developing now are quite a bit different than that first small little store that we opened 30 years ago. But
what kind of responsibilities did you have in your dad's restaurants?
I was mainly involved as in marketing, and I started getting involved when my brother was involved in restaurant operations at the time. And so I kind of learned from that, and I came in from the marketing side as I had just gotten out of college, and so was kind of learned and soaked up everything I could, and really kind of took that experience to develop what I thought would be a successful smaller brand in the Wingers Diner brand at the time. And so yeah, that's really where it happened, and where I kind of jumped off the ledge with Wingers, and 30 years later we're still here, and now we're ramping up growth. So
Yeah, that's awesome. So had you already been a franchisee yourself prior to opening Wingers?
Not prior to opening Wingers. What interesting that happened is just a couple years after that first location opened, my brother Scott and our father died, and so he died in 1995, and so our operation, Scott and I, took over, becoming franchisees. So technically, I became franchisees as our operation took over. We still had Tony Roma's and TGI Fridays at that time, so certainly understood and knew the franchisee business, and then also Wingers was just a small, at that point, just a couple of locations, and so we were just barely starting to grow on the Wingers side, but we were still quite involved. My brother Scott was more involved in operations with our franchise restaurants, and I was a little more focused on our Wingers brand as that was developing and growing.
Was the let's say, was the vibe maybe at the second location a lot different than the first one, which you said was kind of more like an eatery, or did that change more so over the years?
No, the bigger change came later on. Really, for the first 10 years of Wingers development, we opened stores in Utah and a couple stores in Idaho, and we really kept that small diner footprint. And it was successful, but we did learn. We opened a couple stores outside of Utah, and that diner model did not work as well. It only did 75% of the revenue that our Utah stores were doing. And with Wingers at the time, it was a full service brand, was not a fast casual, so it was not something that you would order at the counter and take out. But we did learn as we went outside of Utah, if you're going to be full service, we did not have a full offering of adult beverages, alcohol, bar. We just didn't have that. If you're going to be full service and you go, it was successful locally and regionally, but it didn't travel. And I think having been in so many of us have been in food service. We find things that work in certain areas of the country, and they don't travel very well. And so we have evolved. We actually started opening our first locations that had full bar, and then jumping forward in the conversation, in 2016, we actually did our first, what we call Wingers Alehouse test, where we took a store in Nampa, Idaho, which is just outside of Boise. And it did have a full bar, but we really re-imaged that location completely. We took it from 10 beer taps to 40 beer taps, and we remodeled the restaurant, and that store reopened. And the week it reopened, it was about 60% up in sales. And that location today, that same location, is doing almost 2.5 to 3 times the volume it did before we changed it to the Alehouse. So we're very, very, at this point, our prototype will do typically about 40 beers on draft. We do it is very craft beer forward, with what we feel is a great culinary experience with craft food. And sometimes I kind of joke that it only took us about 20 or 25 years to figure out that it's fantastic wing fingers and beer. And so but now I flip that around, is very interestingly, is our brand now actually does better outside of our home base of Utah than it does. We have great stores in Utah, but we will still do anywhere from 25 to 35% higher volumes outside of the state, primarily because of the beverage component that we get when we go outside of Utah, just those additional sales. And
so is that model that you described in Napa, can that be found in other locations then as well?
Yeah. Yep.
In most other ones?
We've actually been retrofitting existing stores, and all of our new growth is now, with our Wingers, what we brand and as our Wingers Alehouse brand. And we did, and particularly a couple of years ago, we said, hey, now it's really time that we expand beyond. We've been very strong and very prominent in the Intermountain, Rocky Mountain region, and knew that the brand was ripe and it's time to be going and expanding. And we're really focused on expanding into the Midwest right now. And so, several states going in towards Wyoming, Colorado. We open in Oklahoma next month. Several new franchisees developing in Texas. And so all through that corridor of the Midwest is where we are really targeting and feel like our brand is ripe for growth right now.
So in that case, it'll all be franchising in the Midwest?
We're looking to franchise through there, and if the right opportunity comes along that it makes sense for company stores, we're certainly open to that. But from having been a franchisee in the systems we talked about, having been a franchisor, I'm still a real firm believer in the franchise system. I think number one is we've been a franchisor now for about 20 years, and there's a learning curve there. There's a learning curve on how to be a good franchisor, how to be able to work with franchisees and get consistency among the stores. And at the same time, we've been on the other side of that equation, and we know what it takes to be a good franchisee and what that relationship looks like. And I'm still a firm believer that when you get great local franchisees and you have local ownership, and there's still nothing like having that franchisee and owner who are regional, who are there, and they bring the right concept and brand to their area. And it's a formula that I still think, franchising has continued to grow and continued to build, and it's not going away. And there's a reason why.
What do you think makes a good franchisee? Like, what do you look for in a potential franchisee?
So, the first one is really it's passion. It's somebody who who just brings that drive and passion, and it's that entrepreneurial spirit. And we certainly want somebody who's had experience owning and running businesses. It's not 100% necessary to us that the franchise owner, the main franchise owner, has operated restaurants before, because a lot of times we've had a lot of great franchisees who've been in the real estate business, for example, and they may not be running a store, but they brought in operating partners who really deal with the day-to-day operations, and that's been a real successful formula for us. So at the same time, there's probably three pieces to that puzzle. Number one is the geographic area ripe, and it's good for where do we like that for our brand. Number two is we do want a franchise owner, or a lot of times it's a franchise partnership group. It might be a group of a couple owners or two or three owners. Are they capitalized well enough to be able to do that? That's always, if you listen to franchisors a lot, one of the things is you don't want to bring on franchisees who are not capitalized and can't actually accomplish whatever their goals are, or whatever their business plan is. And we do like to have one of the partners to be the operating partner, somebody who has the full-time job of operating that business, day-to-day operating that business. And we usually like to have an operating partner who would have at least 20% equity or interest in the franchise partnership. And so we can certainly teach them the skills. We can teach them our way and the Wingers way, and through our training. But we do like to have that operating partner who is able to bring some type of restaurant experience.
What do you think, with all of the, the franchise opportunities out there, what do you think kind of sets Wingers apart as a franchise opportunity?
So the number one thing that Wingers does is one of our monikers, we like to call ourselves America's small town alehouse. And what that means is we've built our brand with the thought is we love to be able to target smaller markets and be very successful in those markets. Markets that a lot of our national competitors can't make sense of, can't look. We have a strong AUV or unit volume, but at the same time we're able to make small markets, like places you probably maybe haven't heard of: Elko, Nevada, and Mountain Home, Idaho,
Mm-hmm.
and Pocatello, Idaho, and Richfield, Utah, and Rock Springs, Wyoming. And we're kind of a big fish in a small pond. And for those franchisees, for those entrepreneurs, those developers who are looking for the right brand to be able to bring to a little smaller markets, that is really our bread and butter, and that's our niche. Now, at the same time, sure, we're in some metropolitan areas, and we do well there, but at the same time, our typical AUV is about 2.5 million to 2.9 million, and some of our larger national competitors, you take Texas Roadhouse or an Olive Garden or places like those, they're typically looking for 4 to 5 million in top line sales when they open a new unit, and they're going to have a hard time looking at smaller markets that we can make sense of. The other piece too is that our typical size of our restaurant's about 4,500 square feet, so it's a little bit smaller than Buffalo Wild Wings is a big you'd have to call them a competitor too, because they're a 800-pound gorilla sports bar. And so, but their typical units they're going to be more 6,000 to 7,000 square feet. So ours are smaller. They're actually scaled down a little bit for those smaller markets, and that's where we've tried to keep ourselves, and so that we can go into those smaller towns all across the Midwest and US and really make economic sense of those markets where, and so your question, and I bring that up, it really provides Wingers Alehouse for a unique positioning opportunity. And that is our bread and butter, is really small town America.
What are some of the keys to well, you mentioned some of them, to a successful, location, to one location? Is it the location itself? Is it near other restaurants? What are some other keys to a successful location, maybe even involved with marketing?
So the first one, the first one's kind of a no-brainer, Chad, that you probably heard. A successful restaurant is never any more successful than the general manager. And it always comes down with having a great GM, and a general manager can make or break a location. And so developing great GMs is absolutely critical. Now, getting beyond that, a formula that we love from a location formula is we love that smaller town sites that for us would be a lot of times on a freeway exit in a smaller town that would have maybe 3, maybe 4 hotel brands, particularly sometimes, some of the national brands that you'll see next to us. That's been a strategy that's almost been a no miss strategy for us. In a lot of ways, you think about it, we're kind of employing the Cracker Barrel strategy, but we're bringing a little bit more of a we're not quite that country theme. We're a little more of you would look at it a little more of a sports bar, alehouse, gastropub theme, but bringing it to smaller markets. But that has been a formula that is absolutely fantastic for us.
In what ways do you guys kind of support maybe your franchisees and also ensure brand consistency?
Yeah, so great question. And again, I'll go back and refer to, so we've been a franchisee, so we've been really lucky to be able to be involved in a few different franchisor systems, and being able to see franchise support systems that were very effective and some that were maybe not as effective. And the one thing that I feel really proud about and really strong about is I think that we have really gone out of our way to build our franchise support team, and in a way, quite frankly, we've really overinvested the last few years in our overall structure and G&A with we have there's really 2 pieces to our franchise support. The first one is when we have new franchisees is our manager training piece, where new managers for a new store come out. We have a 12-week training curriculum that we will bring franchisees out to, or their management teams, out to training stores. And it's a 12-week program that they go through. And so that's the initial part. But the other part, and then during opening, we have our full training teams. We'll send out a training team of up to 6 people from our corporate training teams, and they're there before opening, they stay after opening. And then we really have our team after that who takes over for ongoing support, and that are in market, in the stores, working with that training team. We almost provide what would be a divisional manager for every single store, and that they're working and working with that full team, and ongoing. We look to provide ongoing training all the time, ongoing updates, and so I feel pretty proud. Like I said, as we've been able to base our franchise support and operations system off of some great franchisor experience, and so I feel really good about where we are as understanding that we've been doing this for a while. We're not new to it. We feel like we know how to provide really good franchisor support, and we can continue to really support and build the brand and keep consistency among the brand, as you say, as we continue to grow.
Has your experience in advertising and media buying affected your approach to marketing Wingers?
Yeah, it has. Although, one of the things that's there, everything's changed, and there's probably nothing that's changed more than marketing and advertising. I know I can think of when I was, when I was back doing marketing and advertising, even media buying. I was doing media buying, and it was really at that point you kind of had so many options. You could do television if you had enough locations inside a market, or you could do radio, and you do direct mail pieces back in the day. Now, with the onset of digital over the last 10, 15 years, things have so dramatically changed. And yeah, all of those other standard mediums are still out there, but the way now that you can target and just market and advertise around each individual location, you can target each location and just market within 5 miles of that location, is such a change and so dramatically different than when I first started, and I was just a young kid back then, and now I'm an old guy. So the answer is yes, and yet the answer is, there's the mediums that have changed so dramatically. Now, you go back, at the end of the day, I think marketing always comes down, the message has to resonate. Throw away the method you're getting out there, whether it's going out digitally, whether it's going out through social media. The one thing is the message. People have to see that message, and it has to resonate in some form. And no matter, you could buy all of the digital or TV if you want, but if the message is not compelling and it doesn't, it's not resonating with people who are seeing it, it's not going to be very effective. So it has to start off with the message and the creative, and you have to be able to express, and convey what that experience that the brand, that experience of the brand. You've got to be able to message that quickly in marketing. And so that's number one. If you've got a great message and it really exhibits what the experience is like when you would walk into a Wingers Alehouse, I can almost guarantee that we'll have an effective campaign, no matter what medium we put it on. So that, it really is. Create a great message, create one that resonates, create one that people are interested in, and you're going to have you're going to be able to have a successful marketing campaign, one way or the other.
Sure. Yeah. Very nice. So you mentioned your father was involved in Outback Steakhouses, Chi-Chi's Mexican restaurants, and you said TGI Fridays?
Said Sizzler Steakhouses.
Oh, Sizzler Steakhouses.
Yeah, that's okay.
Sizzler
That's
Steakhouses.
okay.
Sorry. Sizzler Steakhouses. Chi-Chi's.
Yeah, Chi-Chi's back in the 80s, TGI Fridays, and Tony Roma's.
And Tony Roma's
ribs, yeah.
And then you guys started Wingers. What led you to go down that route, as opposed to maybe recreating a Mexican restaurant or something like that?
Well, I tell you, one of the biggest motivations for me is when I watched the opening of being a franchisee at TGI Fridays. And this is back when, TGI Fridays was really in the heyday, back in the 90s, where they, were growing and doing well. They've struggled a little bit lately, but the one thing, TGI Fridays at the time, it was extremely large, complicated. They're like mega ships trying to get open, very expensive to get open, expensive buildings. And part of my motivation was to saying, hey, I think we can create something in a little bit smaller package and be able to do it without the, a little bit smaller investment. You don't need as many workers and employees, and really, so that was probably the main motivation, is to be able to create something that just wasn't so massive, and just that whole experience from Fridays. And so that really drove wanting to do the first Wingers and open up that first Wingers. And so I know our stores are a little bit larger than they were that first 2,900 square foot location now. But I still feel like, from a operation standpoint, from a building, from an investment standpoint, it's a little simpler. It's a little easier. It's not as big and massive as some of our other national competitors. And that's kind of the spot we've wanted to be and wanted to stay.
Great. I have one more question for you, but first, how can people find out more about Wingers as a restaurant or Wingers as a franchise opportunity?
So they can go to wingersalehouse.com. It could also be directed through wingerbros.com. That's our management company. And they could also go to wingersfranchising.com, and any of those websites will direct them to, and they can learn about the brand. They can learn about franchising opportunities if they would like to. And we'd always love to talk to people about that.
Sounds good. Last question for you. So when you go to Wingers as a customer, what is your go-to item or combination of items?
That is a good question, because one of my rules is I always try to order something different every single time. But the better answer for you is, because my wife goes and I can't keep her from ordering a sticky finger salad. And a sticky finger salad it's our number one selling salad. It has our custom sticky fingers, which are diced chicken fingers, hand breaded chicken fingers, but they're coated in our Wingers original sauce, which we, one of the things that's been consistent from day one, we had our original Wingers sauce from day one. And anybody who's been to Wingers, is the number one thing is we have 18 different sauces or rubs, but everybody craves about our original Wingers sauce. We're famous for it. We ship it all over the world. And but it's like I try to get my wife to order something different, and she won't. She just has to have that every single time. And sometimes it drives me wild, because I have to force her to order something different. But that is just a staple. It is kind of funny, because our name is Wingers. We opened up with wings being a real staple of the menu. And a quick little story is, we used to have, for the first 10 years of our existence, we had a chicken finger dinner on the menu, and it was in the entree section, and it never sold very well. And it was probably in the bottom third of our menu items, as far as in our menu item detail, as far as how much it was ordered. And I remember it was a little after we'd probably been around for 12 years, and we said, what we really ought to do is take our chicken fingers and sauce them like we do our wings in our original sauce. And just we call them Sticky Fingers just for it was a fun name. It was kind of an afterthought at the time, and we put those on the menu. We put them on the appetizer section. We put a sticky finger dinner, which is basic, it was just a dinner made of that. Long story short is we watched every single year for the next 10 years, Sticky Fingers kept growing in popularity. Our name is Wingers Alehouse. We serve more Sticky Fingers these days than we do wings, even though we sell a ton of wings, but Sticky Fingers it's really our version of boneless wings.
Mm-hmm.
But it shocked me that they would become so popular. And it has been kind of fun to sit and watch and see. Yeah, we sell more Sticky Fingers than we do wings, believe it or not. And so yeah, and on an item that we just kind of it was kind of a last second thought. Yeah, throw those on the menu and let's see how they do. And so
yeah, funny how things work out, huh? Hey, Eric, it's been great to talk to you. Thanks so much for all your time and sharing your journey through the restaurant industry and the history of Wingers and everything you guys have going on now. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Chad.
So long, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25. Visit rise25.com to check out more episodes of the show and to learn more about how you can start your own podcast.